and we'll see it on the phone. There you go. There you go, buddy.
Well, there we are.
Like this. Really ghetto, but you know what, it works. Where's your phone?
It does work. There we go. So we good? We're live?
We should be live, yeah.
Okay. So welcome to Touch Base Tuesdays. This is the first live video that I think I've ever done on this channel. Today I've got Pigcake in the chair with me. He'll be asking me questions that you've placed in the comments on previous videos. And if you are catching this live and you want to ask me anything, we've got a live chat as well. So you can ask me about it.
Well, I mean, we've been here in Los Angeles now for a couple days. We came from Vegas. Vegas was an adventure with Magic Live and the all the excitement that comes with that, right? A lot of drinking, a lot of magic, a lot of you getting stopped, which is I would say it's not it's a hit to my ego because I want to get stopped. I want people to go, "Hey, look, it's Pigcake," but instead you're signing books, you're there taking selfies. So it wasn't a good experience for me, but for you, it must have been just so aggrandizing.
Wild. So we started in Vegas. We flew into Vegas, and in fact, the next day we were straight down into Los Angeles. I went and stayed over in Pasadena. Then when we stayed over in Pasadena, we took a couple of meetings and then traveled back to Vegas. And like Pigcake said, yeah, it was such an experience. It were crazy to think that coming all the way over here, there's people that are actually interested in listening to what I've got to say, which is nuts.
No, I would say that as much as it hates, I hate to give you any sort of, I would say like accolade or any sort of praise. You are good at what you do, and you know there's value. People find value in that, whether that's you touching them without them being touched, or seemingly like you're not touching them, or sticking their hands on a table. It's impressive to watch and see you do it over and over and nail it.
Well,
Are you giggling? You're giggling.
I'm just laughing at you having to give me compliments because it's not the usual.
It's definitely not the usual. Every time I have an opportunity to essentially rant on Peter, because imagine I'm 5'3", he's 6'3", he's made of chiseled from marble, and I look like well, I've been told that I can't make jokes that I would ordinarily on my channel, on this channel. So I'm refraining from saying things that might get him in trouble. But you could imagine what I'm thinking right now as to how I look, and I have to compete with this. You look like my long lost dad.
I am your long lost dad's
Okay,
son.
thank you for that. I
And I
appreciate
talk
that.
about as eloquently as you do. So, right, we have some messages, some comments I
Hmm.
sent you, which we can't look at because they're on your phone. So
They're
we're
on
going to
my
have to
phone.
balance between the two. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do this.
Well, I'll keep the crowd entertained here. So we're gonna want some questions that usually Peter would ask in this format. He calls it Touch Base Tuesday. Honestly, I would have called it something else, but where you ask questions, and luckily through his massive intelligence, he's going to answer them and hopefully provide you with some value for free. Some value for free. You're giving all this knowledge out. I'm upset every time. I realize that you're putting out these YouTube channels that are highly produced, or these YouTube videos that are highly produced.
This is not highly produced.
Well, no, this is as ghetto could be. But when you have the YouTube videos, for example, with the Phantom Limb, multiple camera angles, you have camera operators going around. You might as well have a boom operator there.
Well, we
So
did have microphones attached to the roof.
yeah, that's not a production that I'm used to. Now this one is this not something you already answered?
I know we filmed, so just so everybody knows, we did already film a video last week, but the video that we filmed last week, the pieces of it are missing. So this is the live version of the video that's missing last week.
That's okay.
So just to let you guys know, we did actually do a Touch Base Tuesday last Tuesday with my friend Steve, my best friend Steve from England, and Pigcake.
And me,
And the footage, sadly,
I gave it to you.
yeah, it came, but some of it were missing. So I just thought, well, we'll do a live version of the same thing, answer questions, and
Smart move.
here we are, because then it means that I can definitely say that we've gone through everything, we've answered everything, and
So this one is in regard to what I think is your most popular trick called Isabella Star 3.
okay.
When you first met me, I did not like you. I thought that what you did was snake oil, essentially, for lack of a better term. And I was quickly convinced otherwise when within 15 seconds of knowing me, you knew my birthday, my star sign, a name that I was thinking of. You knew the exact birthday that I had. And you also did some other bits to me. I forgot what it was, but I believed in the Turner really quickly. So this one is on Isabella Star 3. And the question is in regards to adapting it to another language. So adapting it, for example, from English to something like German, right? Which is, I imagine, Sebastian Schrackner's hometown. And how would you go ahead and adapt something like Isabella Star 3, which traditionally is based on English, essentially, that you're creating an anagram and going through different, I don't want to call them algorithms, but you're going through different possibilities. How would you adapt that to another language?
Okay, so this is a question that I get quite a bit when it comes to non-native English speakers. How do they take the material that's Propus material and then turn it into something they can use in their
Hmm.
language? And there's a good way to look at this, right? And it's a really interesting way, is to break it down into bite-sized chunks and look at the bits that'll already work, and then the bits that don't, change those. So, for example, if you break Isabella star down into a formula, it starts off by having to know the star sign of the participant. Then it moves into being able to deduce the month based on knowing the star sign. Then it moves into creating a name.
Hmm.
So then divining the name and finishing with the date of birth revelation. And so if you take the star sign element, in a later video, I will cover how you can make star sign anagrams or anagrams of any kind. For now, what I do is I'd search an anagram generator. Maxim Helier has a very good one.
Hmm.
They don't cost anything. You can punch in the list of you can punch in the list of different star signs in there, and in Germany it'll fire back an anagram that works in your country. So that fixes that first section, right? If not, sit down with a piece of paper. It's not that hard to work out the most frequently. So write all the star signs out, and what you do, it sounds like a pain does this, but it's very easy to do. You can do this with any sort of anagram. Very quickly, what you do is you count the number of letters. So let's say, for example, in English, what I do is I go, Leo's the first one, let's say, that pops in my head. How many times does L appear in the star signs? Well, L appears in Leo, L appears in Libra. Do you know what I mean? And then I'll write 2. Or I'll keep going through and count exactly how many. And then, okay, how many letter E's are there in all the star signs? And I'll strike them out as I go, and I'll write. Now, whatever the most amount of letters is, in star signs, it tends to be an R. In English, that's the first letter that I'm going to throw out in an anagram, right? So does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
you take all the star signs in your language, write them down underneath each other in order. Take the first letter of the first star sign and just count how many times that letter appears in all the rest of the star signs and write that number while striking that letter out each time. Now go to the next letter and do the same thing. And then when you've got this list of letters with the amount of times it appears next to it, just look for the one that appears the most. So that's going to be your first letter in your anagram. Now look for the one that appears the second and most, and then keep doing that. And what's going to happen is you'll find that sometimes there's some that occur with the same amount of letters in. Well, it doesn't matter which way around you put those. But you'll quickly find that that'll make you an anagram instantly in whatever language it is you're speaking. So that's the first thing ticked off. Secondly, I hope I'm not wrong in saying this. I might be. It's something I've not done a lot of research into, but I'm sure the months and the star sign correlation's the same. It's just the titles of the star signs are different, right? So now that stays the same. This is the interesting part. You all right, bud?
I'm all right, man.
This is the bit that stays the same, is when it when it comes down to the bit with the names. So the names, what that does is that cues me into the number, right? The months cue me into which, the star sign cues me into which month it is. Then I apply the names, and that gives me a definitive down to either 2 or 1 day. And for that, this is the interesting bit. Because there's only a restricted amount of letters, and you need IS3 to know what I'm talking about. If you don't have it, go find a copy of it. But there's a restricted amount of letters there. Instead of using English names, and this is the bit where it falls flat for a lot of people, if I'm ever traveling to a non-native speaking country, what I'll do is I know that the letters T, F, and S are the letters that I'm going to be working with, right? And then on the flip side, if they can't think of a day of the week, then I know it's going to be O, N, or Z. I know that just because I've done it. So I'll write a stack of names that are not related to these letters, like Chris, Paul, Wendy, Matthew, and Pigcake. I'll just write a load of different names, right? Then I'll take a name that begins with T, and I'll make sure I choose one that's very simple. So it might be Tom. And I'll put that right at the front of the stack towards me. Then I'll take one for F, and I'll put it about a quarter of the way down. And I'll put Fred. And I'll make sure it's a different amount of letters. Then I'll take one for S, and I might put a really long one that's like Sebastian, and I'll put that towards the back, right? Now what happens is, if I ask them to go through and take out a name that begins with that letter, I just have to watch where in the stack they're taking it from to instantly cue me into exactly what name it is. But at the same time, let's say, for example, I somehow miss that, I look away, I'm talking, I can now determine the amount of letters in the name, and I'll exactly know what what name it is they're thinking of. So that allows me to do this in other languages. But what I'd suggest for you is to look at what those letters are and the correlations in those letters for you in your language, and then find things like musical instruments. That's a vastly restricted list. Countries never change.
Hmm.
The name of countries never change. So if you've got a restricted amount of letters, so let's say you've got 4 letters in yours, instead of doing the name portion of IS3, just jump into a section using countries.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about in the original video, that you didn't just restrict it to names, that it's something that works in this case, if somebody wants to find out with a different language, that is not necessarily just restricted to those names like Tom and Fred. And it's something that could be done with objects. It's very easy to translate that, especially when you have the first name. You could have somebody think of a simple object. Most people are going to think of the same thing. So with this, it's the exact same thing. And that bit with the cards is also great. It came from a book test, right? I believe, where they could turn to the first couple pages and you know that
Yeah,
that's the
yeah, so
word.
that's it.
And
Yeah.
that's another parachute that if you're worried about doing this sort of material, that you're going to be able to fall back because now you have a physical component that you could actually see where they physically take.
So it's called banking. So basically, what you do is if you're using it with playing cards or any other piece of information, let's say you were doing a psychological force and you know that the range is going to be 6, 7, or 8, and
Mhm.
you're stuck on 6, 7, or 8. What you can do is by determining the color, you put the 6s at the front end of the deck, the 7s in the middle of the deck, and the 8s at the back end of the deck. So now when you've done your psi force, you can say go through and just take out the card you're thinking of.
Yeah.
And now you know based on where they're taking it from the deck, whether it's a 6, 7, or 8, and you don't need to do a fish then verbally
Mhm.
because you're watching a physical action. So that actually comes where I got that from is from Louis Boudreau, and he
Okay.
had a book called Skullduggery, and Skullduggery were amazing book, and just looking at actions and how the selection process of the action cues you into the thing. But yeah, just again break everything down in terms of its formula, piece by piece by piece.
Well, two things. Sorry to not to interrupt your graciousness,
Okay.
but number one, if the audio is great, please let us know in the comment section. We spend a little bit of time setting up the audio, so I want to make sure that it's solid. And secondly, if you don't mind for me making a video here on Instagram, I don't, all right, so that I could tell people that we're live,
Okay.
if that's all right with you. So
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but
So we're currently doing a live stream on YouTube. I don't know how to visit it. Pigcake does all the tech stuff, so just get on YouTube.
oh, God bless you for giving me some sort of accolade. But you could click on the link that we're going to post on the story, and that's going to send you directly to the YouTube stream. So we'll see you there.
That's it.
You like the extra 5 seconds I added that?
Thank you. The audio sounds good. That's good.
There you go. Oh, so it turns out I have some sort of
I'm not taking that away from you.
skills. But
So just break it down piece by piece. Look at the elements in the Propolis piece that work for you in your language already, and then you don't need to worry about those. And then just find substitutions. And as long as you find those formulas as you piece it together, they'll work in your language. Now, that's not to say that everything will, and there has got to be some sort of work that's put in place there. But yeah, that answers that question.
and just to add on that, because believe it or not, I do have some notes on that when you were talking about it, and especially in the video, that it's great to see it not just as a as what it is and what it's presented, which a lot of magicians fall into this trap where they see something on video or they read something and then they end up copying it exactly as is. So exactly with what we said earlier about that book test and the card bit, you not only did you manage to take that with a set of names, but you could do it with playing cards. You could do it with objects. So it's not just restricted based on what you see it with. It's just a framework. So even Isabella Star 3, which you would think is very specific for finding out the birthday, the name, it's something that you could still extrapolate and use that to find with other things that might be more native in your language.
But that's it. Just play around with it. You know, these things are for experimenting, and it's the same as like songs. If you've ever covered a song, you might find that the original key is just not the key that you sing in.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you take a
Mhm.
capo or capo and you move it, and then you find the key that you sing in, and then it might be that the way you speak, the intonation of your voice is slightly different to the way the original native singer would sing it.
Mhm.
So you have to make certain changes to your own dialect to be able to cover that song. It's like that. I won't ever assume for a second that you have to do everything the exact way that it's meant to be done. It's not totally as strict as you think it is.
It's not, especially with this line of work. Especially it ties into the next bit here with asking you what it is that you carry, because propolis is a term that triggers me tremendously. Lots of T's there. Propolis mentalism, because propolis is a product of what? Is a billet a prop? Is a pen a prop? Is this just mind to mind? Because sometimes a compromise with propolis is now you have more of a process. especially what I've seen, of course, not from you, but you've seen, uh, ridiculous process, and it ends up being like a color that you're trying to
So,
figure out.
so this is something that's really interesting. I think you've touched upon a good point here. That I think I get sort of called the poster boy of propolis mentalism, and I'm really not. I'm not really an advocate for. You want the code? It
I
might be
think I
easier.
should just,
Yeah, I'm not an advocate for any type of mentalism, and I don't mean that that's to say that I don't support mentalism. It's just for me, it's about the plot, it's about the story, it's about the narrative, it's about the way that it's the way that somebody feels, and I sort of feel what it is that I want to do when I'm doing it.
go ahead. Sorry, just
You're worse than
I'm the tech guy. I'm the
you're
tech
worse
guy
than the
here.
Black Death,
There's no comparison to the apocalypse.
right? So yeah, I'm not an advocate for it, and I think it's a very difficult thing to define because, like you say, for me, I think that a verbal revelation is weaker than a physical revelation. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that, and I've said this a number of times, is that if you look at something, let's say you're in a room, there's 50 people, you've done this incredible piece of propolis mentalism, no matter how great it is, and you're working with the one person that just goes, yeah, that were amazing, then everybody else's reactions can only be on the scale of the elation of that one person,
Hmm.
right? So what you end up doing there is you end up having this incredible piece where if you just had written it down and then you turn it round, everybody has the chance to react simultaneously,
Hmm.
and then that might mask the one weak reaction,
Yeah.
right? Now, that for me it means that using that prop to write something down and turn it round makes that piece of mentalism better.
Mhm.
But then if you're going to use that, you writing things down to reveal it, what difference does it make if you're going to hand somebody else something to write it down? It makes no difference at that point. I think though, I think there has got to be a balance of methods. I think it's got to be done right. So with propolis, for example, you might have one propolis piece that you do over here. You might be doing a book test over here, and then using a one ahead to collect a piece of information that's just thought of over here,
Hmm.
right? Or it might be a case of that you've got multiple people and you do a billet peak over here, that you do a book test here, you use a one ahead here, and then you finish with a propolis piece here. So even if this one slightly goes off, you've hit on that one, you've definitely got that one, you've got this one. But there's that balance of people writing things down, selecting things, just thinking of things, and each method cancels the other
Yeah.
method out,
Yeah.
right? And that's what it should be. It should always be a balance. So what do I carry with me? Well, to be honest with you, good mentalism can be done anywhere. You don't really need to carry anything.
Mhm.
Not saying to turn up to a gig with nothing, that's different. Depends on the environment. But you're in the worst case scenario. Finding somebody that has a napkin, a bit of bar roll, and an eyeliner pen to
Mhm.
do, a centre tear is an easy thing to do.
Business cards are everywhere.
Yeah,
Like
I mean, they're on boards, in notice boards, in shops. You could go into a betting shop and find pens. It's like
tickets for metros, like
that's it. And also, people carry phones, and I know there's a really difficult thing with the updates on phones these days, constantly changing. But there's always something that you can do with that. You know, there's like a million and one. There's like a million and one things you could do. So the honest answer is that I have so much stuff that I could do no matter where I am. I mean, we were in a meeting yesterday in Marina del Rey, so we were in a very important meeting, and but I were in an important meeting yesterday, and I literally took nothing with me to the meeting.
Mhm.
I took nothing at all with me to this meeting, and it felt so organic because we were just grabbing people that were around, and I was saying, look, this is what I do, and that was it. And the meeting were a success, and
well, you're again, you have this skill set that's different to a lot of other people. So magicians try to overcompensate by having the thumb tip and the deck and the invisible thread reel. And with you, like just in your catalog of Isabella Star, Lift, what's the other one?
Midas
Midas
Touch,
Touch. Those
PK
are
Whisper.
exactly four tricks right there that you just pulled out of your, and those are things you could do without anything. And especially Midas Touch, I've seen you do that in the worst scenario, and it still hits. I've seen you do it for example, the lift. I've seen you do that in every scenario imaginable. Stood up, sat down, whatever. If you know the method, and it's something that doesn't require any props. Now, again, props is limited by what you define as that. If you borrow something, is that propless now? If you take something, but as far as what you carry, it really depends on your context. If you're,
Yeah, not really much. But
yeah,
if I am going to a corporate event, I'll always take just a little stack of billets, a pen, maybe a deck of cards, and my phone. That's it. Anything I can fit into my pocket.
hmm,
People have coins. I can do a witch hand routine.
yeah,
I can. There's a million routines I can do that require me having nothing.
hmm,
You've seen me. I love like the rock paper scissors game. That's always a bit of fun. I love witch hand, which just requires a coin. If it's not a coin, it could be a ring. If it's not a ring, it could be an imaginary coin. I can do Midas touch. I can do lift. I don't need to take anything.
hmm,
Don't mean that I will.
yeah,
If I've got a piece of card there or a billet there, I'm going to use it.
Exactly that. And don't, I think a lot of people fall into the trap of, oh, I want something to be propolis or I want, and the compromise ends up being too much. But if it's easier to just send it here, if it's easier to just get a peek on a stack of billets, why go through a process that you're not comfortable with other than just for the sake of saying, oh, it's propolis?
Well, narratively, you lose the performance.
Hmm.
So that's the thing. You lose the performance. If the process of the propolis piece is where it has to be, then a lot of the time that is the performance.
Yeah.
You know, so the beauty of something like a billet or just reading somebody or actually doing what you're claiming to do for real is that the actual performance itself is the thing that you're focusing on there, and you're not having to go through this arduous process where when they backtrack it, they're going through every step or thing that you said.
Hmm.
So you know, sometimes the benefit is just to actually
But
use a prop.
you're pliable. You're pliable, and that's the I guess the over encompassing lesson here is to be pliable and to not just be rigid with whatever you think you have on you, or just to be able to be molded depending on the context.
Just learn and just put yourself in enough situations and you'll be great.
Now, Flawless Feep left a comment here on the chat, which I've been reading. No, I'm not farting, by the way. I think that you would be able to determine that. You don't have to be the world's best mentalist to know that if I'm ripping cheeseburgers here, that you'd have some sort of facial.
I would ban you from the room, bro.
You would
And
ban
I'd
me.
finish this live on my own. I wouldn't know how to stop it. But
7-year relationship with a girlfriend, never once passed gas in front of her. So that's my claim to fame. Flawless Feep asks, "Hey Pete, you know how you started out as a magician before you became a mentalist. What led you to become the mentalist you are now? I'm on this bridge hallway between magic and mentalism."
okay, somebody else asked me a very similar question in the last set of videos, but mine were down, I think, down to necessity, and I think that what happened was I had a really bad injury on my right hand. Like if you've seen the How to Control Minds documentary,
Mhm.
you'll see it. But I ended up cutting off the tips of these fingers in a door, and they're still all scarred across. And so I stopped doing cards for a bit, and then I saw Darren Brown on television in England. This is years and years and years ago, and like for the first time in my life, I was fooled by something, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna work out how this works, and then started creating my own ideas and designing them. I didn't have any mentalism books, didn't have access to mentalism books, didn't have the internet, so I just started trying to create what I thought would be mentalism, and then just so happened that there were no ceiling level for what it is that I were creating, and that's not for me to say that we're above anything that anybody else did, but I sort of look at things a little bit differently as well. I think I start from a different place. To me, magic and mentalism and everything else doesn't really matter.
No.
That titles don't really matter. Mind reading, psychic, it doesn't really matter. It's if you look at the start of the intro to the mind reading episode, if you've not seen that, it's on my channel. Check it out. And if you've not liked and subscribed, like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can keep notified. You'll notice that there's a very clever line in there that says, "Over the years, I've been called many things," and then bang, it cuts to reactions of people calling me things, some negative, some positive. He's a psychopath. I believe he's the next Harry Potter. There's a reason for that. But there's a reason for that. And the reason is that it's like, look, I think that we get bogged down so much based on what we think that we are that we forget that we're not what we claim to be. We're what the audience perceive us to be. So if a psychic comes out on stage and they think that this psychic is a fraud, doesn't matter how many times they go, "I'm a medium, I'm talking to the dead," they're a fraud, right? If they say it's just a magician pretending to be a medium, then that person's a magician. Like the audience are what defines what you are. The only reason that you're putting a box or a label around it is so that you can somehow market it into a specific market, right? Your audience are the things that decide what you are. So I always say, look, over the years I've been called many things, but the best way to describe what I do is just to say that I read and influence people. That's me saying what I do, telling you what it is that I do, but telling you it also defies label.
You're right.
Which is what I always wanted. I wanted to sort of negate that. Like, it doesn't restrict me. If I want to play something that's a little bit more close to the psychic world, I can do that. If I want to say, look, during my journey, I learned to play the brain like an instrument, and I had to study psychology along the way. I'm not saying that I'm a professor in this. I'm not saying that I went and got qualified in this. I'm not saying X, Y, and Z. But what I am saying is that during my investigations, I saw people that were looking at this stuff. So I studied psychology. I studied criminal profiling. I studied psychics. I studied science. I studied art. And all of these things come together to make me exactly what you see now. And to put a label on that, there's too many characters and too many hats that I'm wearing to tell you specifically what it is that I do. but just to say that I read and influence people. So don't worry too much about your label. But to answer your question quickly, start with what you know. Take an ambitious card. Ambitious card routine is a great way to have somebody select a playing card. It goes in the middle. Okay, now in a moment, I'm going to try to find your card. I'm going to hold it up like this. And now you're holding the card that were actually their card and just pretend to read them. First start theatrically and start making it look like you're reading somebody, making it look like you're doing what you're purporting to do. And then just slowly but surely what you'll find is a rhythm for it. You'll know some people you got to reveal things quickly, other people you've got to take things a little bit more slowly. Sometimes you add more theatrics and then start adding bits in. You know, if you could force a playing card, hold on to somebody's pulse and pretend you're taking their pulse. And just pretend you're looking at the heart rate, you know, and start to first get down the theatrics of what it is that you're trying to express. Then when you learn real techniques later down the line, you'll already have the theatrical elements needed to tack onto the back of that. But it means you can do what you're already doing now, and you instantly have half a mentalism set before you've ever changed your act.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, technically, you could turn any trick into a piece of mentalism. I believe your friend Richard Osterlin does this with the linking rings, right? He does it.
There's an interesting thing there. He does the linking. He doesn't do it as a piece of mentalism. So that were a Kreskin piece, and you know, not to tell you what it was, but the reason that they did that, Kreskin used to open and do the linking rings, and Osterlin opened and did the linking rings. He does on a pencil, and he did the big ones as well originally. But the reason they do that is to say, look at this. This is a trick. To say, look, if it were a trick, I'd tell you. What you're about to see is not this.
Yeah.
And they'd use it to show you the contrast between a magic trick and a piece of mentalism, which I thought were always an interesting angle. I mean, for me, I don't like. It's so difficult because as soon as producers, execs, or anybody in that regard hears the word trick, they instantly label you as a magician.
Yeah.
And so I try to stay away from that. I fit in line with the Bob Cassidy school of thought and calling it an effect. And then I've always gone one step forwards, like one step further, and said I changed the E for an A. It's an affect. Well, do you know what I mean? It's like it sounds silly, right? And I know it doesn't really.
No, I get it, but it just sounds like you're very like, oh, it's not effect. It's
no, I won't say that to people. I'm not, but I'm saying for me, that's the way I approach it. I go, okay, how does my effect affect somebody, and that's it. Well, it's cause and effect, you know. It's, but I don't call it a trick.
No, you're right. You're right, and it's that I call it participants, for example, from the school of.
I call it that as well, but I also call it spectators. You know, there's other people that call it customers. There's people that call it all sorts of stuff. Again, subject in hypnosis, you call it a subject, but that makes them sound like they're part of an experiment. So I think that, again, don't really be bogged down too much by labels. If you're a mentalist and you want to call yourself a magician, call yourself magic, say what you're doing is magic. If you want to call it a trick, call it a trick. I don't use the word patter.
Yeah, okay.
I don't like that. To me, it sounds, again, for me, it just sounds like it's something that's how magicians talk. So I always call it a script. But that comes again from the school of Cassidy, and again because I work in television, I have to know that. You know, so I call effects and scripts, and I think that's better. And I'm even going as far now as calling them social experiments.
Okay, because I think to Jabrizi or Ryan Trick.
No, I mean their social experiments are a little bit different.
They are a little bit different.
Do you know what I mean? But I think people, when they hear social experiment, it sounds something like it's okay. He's doing experiments socially, and I think that's quite a nice thing.
Better than a trick.
Yeah, it's better. I think it sounds bigger. It sounds more grandiose without doing anything.
Well, the point that I was making, I guess, where I just used the Osterlin as a comparison, is that you could technically turn any piece of magic into a piece of mentalism. So even the linking rings, if you patter it correctly, you could technically turn that into.
You see, you patter it correctly.
There you go. All right, the semantics. But even an ambitious card, it could be the perception of me making it seem like that card, and it might not be reality, and you're doing that through some sort of means that would be more akin to mentalism than the traditional. I'm going to snap my finger and make it go from the middle to the top. You know, I was just making that as a point. This is a good one.
Go for it.
This is a good one because I'm also learning some bits here, and I was always curious about your Q&A, right? Because I know you have some Q&As that are more related to stage pieces, and you also have more intimate Q&As that are that I've seen you do with a stack of cards and maybe 4 or 5 people on a table. But Magic Avi says lots of performers say that Q&As to be performed in an intimate setting. Is this a routine that could be adopted for fun environments like parties with friends, etc.?
Q&A, we're always one-on-one. I mean, not always, but I mean, mostly what you'd find is that magicians and mentalists used to go to parlor houses, and then there were ones that you saw at carnivals. the ones that you saw at carnivals or town halls or ones that were putting on demonstrations, generally tend to have just a Q&A act, but mainly Q&A were done in sitting rooms. So, and depending on how serious the person were playing it, they'd be invited in one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be like 10 people would sit there, they'd all have slips of paper and do X, Y, and Z. A lot of the time, it were a very rich person that were paying somebody to come in and they'd do a Q&A act. So yeah, of course it can be done. There's no rules to any of this stuff, right? Like there literally is no rules. You can do what you want to do. If somebody says to you, okay, look, this piece requires 60 people, 100 people, you'll be able to make a version that requires one person.
Mm-hmm.
There's no hard and fast rules with any of this stuff, and that's it. You've got to remember that everything that if you're asking that question, you're already wondering if there's a restriction.
Mm-hmm.
And my honest answer is no. Like the amount of times that I'll do a Q&A, and if I'm ever out, and let's say I'm having a beer, somebody starts to talk to me for a second, and they already believe in psychics and mediums and other things, I'm not going to start busting out billets and spending ages and hours doing something. I look at them very confident. I'll tell them what I think the question is that they'd ask me, and then I give them an answer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it. It's like it works. I asked Justin Miller. I were in Ohio with Justin Miller, and Justin took us to this dive bar in the middle of nowhere. Again, didn't have anything with me, but if you just ask him about the reaction, the girl started crying based on the answer that I give to the question,
Mm-hmm.
and then she's hugging me and thanking me. Can I buy you drinks? I want to pay for your drinks. I'm like, you don't need to buy my drinks, but thank you. I'm like, just as long as you got the answer that you were looking for, and that's all that matters to me. But I'm never giving medical advice. I'm never giving advice on anything that is beyond my qualifications. I just stay in my own lane and do my own thing. So, but to answer your question, yes, you can do it close up. I've done it close up. I've done it one-on-one. Go back to Jinx in 2014. I think I had a really nice Q&A act in there. Open Practical Mental Effects or 13 Steps to Mentalism, and any of those books have one-on-one Q&As.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the window envelope were first introduced like that.
As a Q&A.
Yeah, used like that.
Well, I've just noticed that you have a chunk of your ear missing.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something that
This?
yeah, I just realized that looking at you and
You
realized
never noticed that?
I've never noticed that. That you have a piece essentially Evander Holyfield out of your ear. So that's another, I'm sure that's a good question to ask, right? Hey, how did you get a piece of your ear missing?
Well, I had a stretcher in there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I had a stretcher in there, and then
That's my nickname.
it
in high
wasn't
school.
in there. Stretcher. Could have been worse.
We have a couple questions here coming through. I know you had some from the previous one.
Yeah, if you
but-
want to. So if you swipe up and go like
Well, I don't want to look through your
this,
pictures.
no, you just swipe right in here.
Okay.
So you could do what you want. There's no one there.
Well, here, Sybil Mystery asked the following question. He goes, going more in depth of the behind the scenes of how-to videos, of how videos come together would be great. I always grab a camera and go and film something that looks really crap in comparison. So would it be cool to really understand what goes into making your stuff look smooth as from a behind the scenes perspective?
Watching this, you wouldn't believe what I'm like. Like you've been on set with me a number of times.
Mhm.
Like even the most impromptu bits that seem shaky, every camera shake is planned.
Mhm.
That's not added in post. Like everything is meticulously planned. Like and directorially, we were down on Hollywood Boulevard the other day filming something, and we'll run it once. I'll watch it back on the camera, and I'll say, right, okay, this is what needs to happen. This line here, you're going to move to here. I want you to move in slowly on this bit. This is what's going to happen. And like, let's say, for example, that we're doing a walking piece, and I want it to feel like the camera didn't know that I were about to stop at a certain place or whatever. I'll have the camera overstep one stop and then chase me back. And all those little things are tiny because, Mark Lemon and I have talked about this in great depth. But a camera should always feel like it's chasing the action instead of leading it.
Mhm.
And David Blaine's Card Through Window is a perfect example of that. You go back and watch David Blaine's Card Through Window, he's performing, the David takes the cards and throws them at the window and the camera goes, oh, and then runs and chases it. But then watch every subsequent camera to window after that, card through window, camera to window, card through window after that. And it's always the camera pans up to the window and waits, gets it in focus, and now the cards get thrown at the window, which suggests that the cameraman always knew that that's what was going to happen,
Mhm.
which suggests that this is not as impromptu as it's supposed to feel,
Yeah.
right? So I try to make everything feel so off the cuff, and I try to make it feel like, take the right place at the right time piece. Like it's a really off the cuff piece. And but ultimately, I know, and the camera knows that the number 68 is going to be what's called out because that's what the revelation is, right? We know that. But if it lifts up and you see the 68 first,
Yeah, kind of
then you
lose it.
blow your revelation.
Mhm.
If you make the 68 come into focus when the reaction's happening, then you lose the reaction.
Mhm.
So that's a balancing act when you're using one camera. So the way we talked about it, Decay and I, was like, look, keep it waist height, leave the camera dip down. I'm going to grab the people and I want you to pull the camera up, but I want you to go a little bit too high and realize you're going a bit high and you're about to flash the number and then come back down. So then what happens is when you're watching that, it's like, look, you can see the cameras. Oh, you see the cameras coming up as you're hearing the audio come in. The camera starts to shake a little bit and then it pulls back down. And now, have you ever heard of right place at the right time? Yes. They turn, we get their reactions, we lift up, we see their reaction, we see the number out of focus in the background, we wait till the reaction dies down, the camera focusing on the number, then it comes back to their reaction,
Mhm.
right? And then you get the second wave of reactions. So to answer your question, like it's just plan what you're doing.
Mhm.
Think about, watch it. Take a phone. It doesn't. You can film on anything these days as long as the audio's good. Invest in good audio equipment. You can watch the crappiest footage on the planet with the best audio and it'll fly. If you're watching the crappiest video, if you're watching the crappiest audio, but the best video, you won't sit through it. You will not be able to sit through that. So even if it's just on a mobile phone, if it's on a mobile phone, think about what's happening during those moments. And you and the person that's filming it need to meticulously know what's happening. Now, there's nothing wrong with like a camera being wide and filming the action,
Mhm.
but the only time that really happens is if you're voyeuristically looking at something, right? Like this is a security cam watching it. So be part of the action and treat the camera like the eyes of a third spectator. What would that spectator be looking at? What would they be looking at and focusing on? And once you've pinpointed those things, just pay mind to those and hyper focus on those. Practice it a couple of times. Go out and then whatever. Sometimes what you'll find is you'll notice that some sequences are montaged, and they might be montaged for a reason. It might be that a car went past and the noise were ridiculous, the microphone cut out, somebody bumped into the camera whilst it were being moved. There's a lot of reasons why sequences might be montaged. I mean, the reaction might have been too good to lose, but you've got the essence of the effect from another take, right? But I'm not a fan of like multiple takes. I can normally go out and get stuff in one take, and then I'm bad for it because I'll go just one more for safety, just one more for safety, and I'm push myself like one more, and I do it over and over and over again, right?
Well, you gave me when I was we were in Hollywood filming that. You gave me a couple of directions. Number one was hold the camera higher, but that's just the nature of my height. And secondly, you were repeating that notion of make sure that it's what the participant uh, would be seeing had they been there. And then there was a couple of times where I'm trying to film it and make sure that all the things are in frame perfectly. And you said no, make sure that you get it naturally with the reaction of the participant, to see the reaction and to kind of again pretend like I'm just there, that I'm representing the eyes of the participants that would be there anyways, but they're not because they're sitting on a couch somewhere at home.
and
So
that's it. But it also makes the person that's watching it feel like they're a part of it.
exactly, yeah.
And that's very important because for me, it is planned, but just get good sound.
Hmm.
That's all you need is good sound, and just go and film. And there's like one last little tip on the behind the scenes stuff. You could be the most incredible live performer, and then get such a vibe in the room and an environment, but then when you film it, you watch it back and you go, oh, this looks terrible. And that's because the vibe doesn't translate through the screen,
Hmm.
right? So what you got to do there then is learn to get good on camera. And when you learn to get good on camera, that'll have a direct effect on your live act. No matter how good you are live, doesn't mean that translates to camera, but when you get better on camera, it translates to live. So that's a very, very important thing to note. That's so important.
Well, this one from Mike Ianel says, I would love to learn Pete's techniques on scripting for mentalism, maybe your next book. We should have brought your book here, the one that you currently have out, but alas, we didn't think that far ahead.
No, it's all right. But yeah, so scripting, it's a really interesting one because I think sometimes, like, in the past, I certainly went over the top with scripting. I went a little bit too far and it sounded like something out of a book. And I've really reined that back. And now I'm learning to say what I need to say without saying anything. So how much does my body language say? How much can I say but with my actions? And then I fill in between the gaps with what I think is interesting. Do you know what I mean? And then I always add one little bit that I know that you think's funny every time I add it.
Which is?
Well, just every time I add some little quip, like, oh, you know, like you're no longer strangers. You know, like
Oh yeah, your little
yeah,
like
you know what I mean? Like,
tags.
how's that for finishing off each of a sentence? I always have. That's one of the things that I do is I always have a closing remark. Whether it makes it in or not is a different thing, but I always have some quip or closing remark that bookmarks the performance. Because then I know I've got a definitive start, I've got a middle, and I've got a definitive end.
Yeah. But the problem with scripting, as far as what I see, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you have this rigid structure that you could follow and abide by, but then at the same time, a lot of people, because they don't feel comfortable necessarily performing, it seems like it's overly rehearsed, and it seems like it's something that's not. For example, Greg Wolfman talks about his best compliment being that nobody knows when the patter ends and the performance begins. But if you feel like this is overly rehearsed and it's a script that you're going to, and suddenly you jump into character mode with this rehearsed script, audiences pick up on that and
Well,
they kind
that's
of turn
because
off.
people are playing characters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think then the bigger rule there, and I think that the Gregory Wilson thing answers it like perfectly, is just be yourself.
Be yourself. Yeah.
You know, like obviously I don't always speak the way I'm speaking now.
Hmm.
You know, that's sort of dialed in for people to understand me.
Hmm.
Do you know, I change it slightly, but it's not massively different from my
Yeah.
regular dialect. It's just a little bit dialed in. But the way I think, the way I speak, you know, and if you spent even an hour driving around with me, you'd understand. Like I'm willing to drive from here all the way to Mississippi for one reason, because when I was a kid, I learned to spell it MISSISSIPPI, and the mnemonic to remember to spell it is the
Hmm.
reason I'd go there, and I'd do something relating to memory.
Yeah.
I'd go and sit and write about an effect based on memory just because of
But
that.
your performance, for example, persona, or the way you would script things, suddenly, I mean, there are tricks that require a little bit of scripting, like for example, Midas Touch, which is entirely semantics.
But that's process.
Process. Yeah.
That's procedural scripting. So
Hmm.
those that's instruction based script. It's got to happen. So it's like if you were asking somebody, you know, if you were asking somebody to walk down a street,
Hmm.
and you said, "I need you to walk down, turn left, turn." They're procedural scripts. So that's different to. They've got to be there for the
Yeah.
effect to work.
Yeah.
But I think you know, like talking about cleansing an aura, which
Hmm.
were one of the original like PK things, don't fit my character.
No, and that'd
So
be. I don't think that fits anybody's character,
you
to
know,
be honest.
so that's the thing, is think about what area of your life this fits into. You know, Alberto just asked an interesting question, like, what are my thoughts on real ESP? And I will come back to the question, but it's a great question because let's say that, for example, in my life, I absolutely did not believe in real SP, or I did. That'd dictate the way that I'd script that routine. I
Yeah.
wouldn't copy how somebody else had written it in a book. It wouldn't be a poltergeist that came in and did this. If I absolutely didn't believe, I'd say, you know, it's really interesting how the brain can trick the body.
Hmm.
You know, have you ever heard of, you know, when you're chopping vegetables and you accidentally nick your finger, but you don't realize till you look down, that's when it starts hurting.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean you're invincible.
Yeah.
But the same time, you know, like I think that people can read into that a little bit more, and they can believe in things that they don't have to believe in. And scientifically, I think there's an explanation for it. But let me give you an example of what that might look like. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just making this up, right? I'm just making that up now. But my point is that if I didn't believe, maybe I'd go as far as saying that. You know, I think there is something scientific, but I am intrigued how the brain can trick the body. If I absolutely believe, I'd say, you know, I think we're so hyper aware of the things that are going on around us. It's almost like all of us have taken our five senses and heightened them to create a sixth sense, right? Like, which is an old line. It's a Ned Rutledge line. But I think there's something interesting in that, and then maybe saying, "Let me show you what I mean." You know, have you ever done that thing where, and again, this is an old line, where you thought about somebody and the phone rings and it's that person? Now you could look at that as though it's just a coincidence, but I bet it's happened so many times that it defies logic.
That's a human experience that we've all had,
But that's it. And then
the-
you do. I mean, I'm not saying to do touches with that. I have a more interesting plot where I don't want to. I'm trying not to let the cat out of the bag now because I filmed it and I want to share it in one of the episodes.
Mhm.
Right? I have a really interesting take on that. I have an interesting take on a lot of the PK stuff for the episodes. You know, but my point is this: is that if you're going to script magic, just think about your own life. Think where these things fit into your own life, and just talk from your own perspective, because nobody else can do that for you. Nobody else has had your life experience. You're one in one. You know, you're 1 in 8 billion. So just show the world your life through your lens, and it'll always feel credible. It'll always feel genuine. It'll always be your art, your brushstrokes, your canvas, and you can paint it the way that you want. And all the my effects or anybody else's that you're performing, that's just the paints.
Hmm.
We just give you the art supplies, and then you create the art.
Look at you being speaking in parables.
It's my life. Almost like I speak in rhythm and rhyme.
It's part and parcel of the Peter Turner experience. But this is a question in regards to dual reality,
Okay.
and it's about guilt when doing something that involves a dual reality bit. And then he asks, I guess he rephrases the question: how can I get rid of "I just did the trick part" feeling when I'm delivering certain line that is crucial in scripting or for something to work in relation to dual reality?
Okay. So I remember reading that question. It says I always use some form of dual reality in my performance, which is not true. It's like again, everything that I perform is within the right balance of the rest of the things that I perform. So it might seem like that. What's interesting is whenever you watch some of my stuff on video, and this is the bit that would blow your brain out. I reckon some of the things that you think are dual reality are absolutely not, and some of the things that you think are not dual reality absolutely are. And the method is often staring you in the face
Mhm.
that you'd think that that's the way that you'd think that another it's done another way because it's more obvious, but it's not because there's a lot of allowance for lines in the things that I do. So you're taking the Phantom Limb piece. Every single person that's talked to me about that has said, "I thought I knew what were going on until you grabbed the limb and pulled it across the table, and then you asked to clarify where they were feeling it, where Laura were feeling it." And those two pieces were always planned to go in for that reason. And you look at the Out of This World that's
Mhm.
been performed. The method for that, there is a much simpler way to do it. A method that I've used for years and years and years, and I only partially use that for one little bit, like one little bit, and then the rest of it from that point is not that.
Yeah.
So again, it means that I can sprinkle in lines that I wouldn't usually be able to sprinkle in. And if you ever hear me ask for a line where it's a really clear line that defies what you think the method is, then I'm probably using a different method to what you think I'm using at that point. So, I don't use dual reality as much as people think. I love dual reality as a technique, but I like Mark Shandau's term. He's watched a lot of the things that I do, and he calls what I do blurred reality.
Mhm.
So instead of it being dual reality, it's blurred reality because even if the people talk afterwards, their experiences are still more or less aligned, or it's more impressive for the one person that you'd usually get a lesser effect.
Mhm.
But you take Laura, I performed for Laura for 20 minutes, her and her dad, before we sat down because whenever you're meeting somebody you don't know, I mean, I didn't set that interaction up for one. I added a load of amputee groups on Facebook. I then put the feelers out, mind the pun, to a lot of my friends, and they managed to go out and they found somebody for me. And then I met Laura. I'd never interacted with Laura. I met Laura for the first time in a restaurant in Wakefield, and we went downstairs into a dimly lit room, and she brought her dad along, and I'm like, okay, like this could be a prank show, it could be anything. So
Mhm.
I just sort of then do 20 minutes, and then Laura experiences all of it's filmed. I've got the 20 minutes. I'll never use the 20 minutes, not because then none of it were good, all of it were great, but ultimately what it does is it cannibalizes and dilutes the 5 minutes to what I really wanted.
Mhm.
And her dad were actually giving me more incredible reactions than Laura was. And the great thing about her dad is her dad then started to talk to me about things as a mountain rescue that he'd experienced that were out there in line with what you'd believe if you thought I was some sort of extraterrestrial being. So her dad had really got that perception of the fact that I was somebody from another planet that were doing these extraordinary things. And what you're seeing on camera there, the vibe in the room was so electric when that happened. They were like so quiet and creepy.
Mhm.
Like I you'll notice in the performance I looked away a few times, but I looked away because I almost didn't want to start smiling. I didn't want to break that tension that I'd created there. So I don't use dual reality as much as you'd think, but just make sure the balance of everything else that you're doing is right, and also make sure the thing that comes after the dual reality is much stronger, and therefore people feel about talking about that than they do something else. So whilst you're loading up another question, let me just answer Alberto's question. So Alberto, thank you for tuning in. If you tuned in, thank you for this, because this is, like I said, the first live that I've done. This makes my life so much easier because I'm not having to edit things and nothing mess about. But says, "Hey Peter, what are your thoughts on real SP? Do you believe in it? Have you explored the fact that you can actually influence people with your thoughts and your intention and thoughts?" Um, The answer is yes and no. Like, so I sort of sit on the fence with it because I have experienced things that I can't really explain or define. But that doesn't mean for a second that I haven't tried to find explanation. And then there's things that everybody else has experienced that I have managed to define. So it's like, I think as a logical thinking skeptic, I'd like to say that I don't believe in that stuff, but I think somewhere inside me there's a big hope that there is that stuff because I think the world would be much more interesting. And
Definitely.
I don't mean in like the sense of, oh, I'm going to buy miracle spring water from Peter Popoff and it's instantly going to be able to cure any ailment that or illness.
And
that
it
I've got.
didn't. It didn't make me taller.
Right.
So I tried it.
That's it. You know, borrow some of Ryan's cream.
That make me. I don't want to look like an egg though.
Okay. But yeah. So my point is there that yeah, I think so. I think it'd be rude to think that of all the planets in the entire cosmos, there wouldn't be some other intelligent life form out there, right? That's one thing. I'm not saying that I believe in aliens from the planet Hoover, or that there's extraterrestrial beings that come down and we're going to have an Independence Day style scenario. But I am saying that I think that it'd be extremely close-minded to think that we're the only intelligent form of life in the entire cosmos. And if that's true, then there's a possibility of other things, you know what I mean? And I think that a lot of conspiracy, I asked this question on Instagram, I think a lot of the things that we considered conspiracies just 5 years ago, and we're now seeing that a lot of those things are more true than we could have ever believed. And the amount of people that came back to me, and I have something to do with conspiracy theories in the show, that's why I put out the feelers on Instagram, but it opened my mind to when people were delivering facts to me, you know, undisputable facts from sources that completely did a 180 on the thing that they were talking about. And I have to say, you know, for me, I'm a lot more open-minded than I probably was 10 years ago.
You're
So
welcome. You're welcome for
answers
that.
your question.
Right. This one, I guess people could know the answer already based on your tattoos, but it says Animan or Corinda. So Darren Close, mind reader, is asking Animan or Corinda. Assume one of them needs to be removed from history, including all their works. Who are you keeping and why?
So both of them are great. It's both giants. I love both of their books. I do have Animan tattooed on my hand just here, and this one's Dunninger.
I have the same tattoo.
You do.
To read it. The same.
So depends on the way you look at it. Look, I'm biased towards Animan, but they never. The honesty is with these people. Animan were a much more prolific creator than Corinda, but Animan also published a lot of other people's works. And at a time, the one thing that I credit Animan for that nobody else on the planet, I think, managed to successfully do as well as Animan is that he were a prolific writer to other artists around the world, and he got permission for their effects, and they were put into the Jinx, they were put into the Phoenix, they were put into all sorts of books, different books like Shh, It's a Secret, like there were a lot of different books that Animan created. And if you look at those, they're almost compilations of people's works from around the globe. But then Animan subsided that with his own stuff as well. Corinda's book, 13 Steps to Mentalism, were originally a small series of little books. And the rumor, a lot of people don't know this, I'm not going to say what I know on the matter because I've talked to personal sources close and I've asked the question outright on other formats before, but Corinda's 13 Steps, there are people out there that think that the majority of the rewrite were done by David Berglas.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And a lot of people don't know that. So I'm not saying that is or is not. I've asked. I've had personal conversations with people about this that were in the know at the time. And yeah, so a lot of people think that the genius behind Corinda, not to take anything away from him, was David Berglas.
That makes sense.
And David's a genius, or was a genius. David were an incredible, the best. So to answer your question, I'd probably keep Animan's because Animan has directly changed my life. I won't be sat in America right now. I won't be traveling, doing meetings. I wouldn't have been able to get a car. We're doing a road trip. We're coming to a town near you, so let us know where you are. We're going to do a road trip. We're going to just visit random places. I'm going to film in random places. I'd have never have got to where I am today. I'd have never had the thoughts that I have today if it hadn't been for Animan. So, yeah.
Rip in peace, as they say. Bob Pound left a comment here saying...
Bob. So if you don't know Bob Pound, Bob's left a comment. Thank you, Bob. Bob is a genius. I've worked on a few things with Bob. And Bob and I, the man can build, design, and think of anything. You say to Bob, and I've seen this, you say to Bob, we need this impossible thing in X, Y, and Z. and we need it by tomorrow. Bob will cram, read, find, build, design, print, and make anything that you think's impossible, he'd make it possible. Like, I don't know why he's not working on like big Hollywood productions and getting. I know that CGI is the thing these days, but like from the era of building the horror films back in the past, Bob would have been perfect
Mhm.
at that. Like he can build, and he has. I'm not going to say what it is, but in my opinion, the best drawing duplication, the best. The specifications of it impossible. Like he could be out of the room, test conditions. It's like the greatest drawing duplication I've ever seen. Right.
Oh, you're teasing. I think you're teasing.
It's incredible. Like, and you know, hats off to him. Like, and also, a lot of people ask me, where do you get those little billet holders that you use? Bob Powell made them for me. I have my pad. Like, I don't know if I've got it in my bag, but
Yeah, it's in the room next door. Maybe.
is it in the room next door? I have my pad. It says Sleight of Mind on it, and Bob went out and Bob went out and did that.
What a great name too, Bob Pound. My goodness.
Did I ever? What you? I told the joke too that I said that Bob Pound's family were responsible for minting the pound coin.
That's I'm glad you didn't tell
Right.
me that joke.
I can't remember who it was. I told her, like, is it his real last name? I'm like, yeah. I said, you know, in England, our last names are directly correlated to what our heritage did in the past.
Mhm.
So, for example, my last name's Turner, so we were metal lathe workers.
I thought you guys turned pages.
I wish crickets just started.
Well, I actually have them. I could set them up. I have a
little button.
zoom in and I have a car crash.
But yeah, so I told him, I said, and Bob Pound's last name was the Pound because his family were the ones that minted the pound, and that's how he got into building props.
Okay, look at that. That's
It was just a great little bit.
Well, it's not your
It was
best.
just a little. It was just, no, because it's believable though. It was like a little prod.
Well, you've done those a lot of bits to me where you tell me something and it ends up being not true, and then I tell people, and I go, "Hey, did you know that?" And then
It's just a little prod. You know, the Starburst is a good example of that.
That was a great one, the Starburst. I'm not gonna retell that story, but that was a wonderful one. Really made me seem like I was an absolute troglodyte.
So what did Bob say?
Bob says, with people being able to put out probes into people's heads and be able to read thoughts, it's not impossible to believe a world that it will be achievable remotely in years to come.
He's right. You know,
Right.
like we were just looking into this like a week or so ago, where now AI has, for the first time, been able to look at a thought, translate those brainwaves and patterns into imagery, then upscale the imagery, then find the closest thing to that and upscale it again. And I think it were a bus that were on the picture or a truck, and it were a truck. So it got the thing right, it just didn't look right.
I'm just looking through the questions.
Oh, there's
here.
a lot. So
someone's talking about using ChatGPT to
do you want
find
to read
out.
it to me?
Well, yeah, there's the last one here by Alberta that says, for example, I asked ChatGPT about how to perform a basic Q&A, and it gave me some nice insights, which is interesting because every time I've used ChatGPT to just find out things like to see what it knows about magic and mentalism, it's always kind of crappy.
I'm not a massive fan of AI. I think that a lot of people know how to work it a lot better than I do. But I've looked at it and I've tried to get in line with it, but I'm naturally able to quickly come up with plots and premises. You know, like just to give you an example, I was sat in this meeting and I said one thing that I'm pretty good at is you give me any profession, you give me any plot, and I'll be able to give you something that we could film in seconds.
Mhm.
And they went, that's not possible. I'm like, give me anything. And they went, a dental hygienist. I'm like, what's a dental hygienist? They were like, the assistant to a dentist. And I'm like, okay, we call them dental assistants in England, but all right. And then this is a script straight out. 35% of Americans are so petrified to walk into a dentist. They literally have an anxiety attack before they walk in the door. So today I'm going to visit a dentist and I'm going to turn the tables on them. Right? You see me walking in, right? There's like the dentist and the dental hygienist, and I get asked to sit back and they're like, just open your mouth. I do. They rinse it out. And I'm like, look, I'm really scared. Like, I'm panicking. And this dental hygienist says, oh, you have nothing to panic about. And I'm like, maybe if you tell me about your fears, maybe if you tell me about what you're scared of, then that'll help me ease my fears. And my head's leaned back like this, my mouth's open. Like, just close your mouth and start telling me about the fact that they're scared of scorpions. And that when they were kids, when she were a kid, she went out to the dentist, she went out to the desert and she was scared by scorpions. And then just as she comes to put something in my mouth, I open my mouth and a scorpion climbs out of my mouth and you see her petrified on camera. Like seconds it took me to think of that.
That is the most dynamo thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like I could totally see Dynamo doing that. like just doing that and then
We,
just
you know, we had something. We were working on something a while back that something. I'm not going to say what it was. It's were some because it might happen later down the line. But it were inspired by a Jonathan Goodwin idea, which is very similar to that, in fact. But the plot, the framework of the dental hygienist, I think, is a really interesting thing there. I think it works in an interesting sense. You know.
yeah. Well, it's funny that you, of course, I could already see the way it will be filmed. Like I'm looking at the annoyances of how you record stuff. That I could just see that completely. It's funny.
I just think there's something really interesting, and I'd wait until I saw somebody actually panicking. You know, like
You want to answer that one about amnesia? I see a
I don't
question
know
about
what it is.
amnesia. You
Do
want
you
me
want to read it? Yeah, I don't know. It says, by the way, I love the effect amnesia and making the spectator forget their card. Are there any other dual reality effects where the card's similar to this nature you know? So there were a thing originally. So the very first time I ever saw this plot was in a Luke Jamay book, and I think also titled Skullduggery. Oh no, it was Seven Deceptions. Sorry, not Skullduggery. Skullduggery were, I think, the
the
video
video? Yeah.
that accompanied Seven Deceptions. But Luke Jamay did,
RGM.
yeah, called Reverse Gestalt Moment, and it were released when he was 15, I think,
Mhm.
maybe 15. And that's a great version of it. I mean, we've had a discussion about this exact plot. For me, we have a difference in opinion, which is good. You know, you like to have.
Mine's, mine's
No,
an
it's not.
opinion.
It's not
Yours
that.
wrong.
It's,
Yeah, yours is right.
no. It's. I mean, me and you are going to have to just agree that I'm right.
Nice. Thank you.
No, it's the fact is that there's different ways to present it. The way that Luke does it, and I really like Luke's version, is that they genuinely forget the card sometimes, and then other times that they forget it and misremember another card, right? Which is all right. The problem is that I found in some settings, and it's not just using that type of method, is whenever they're thinking of another card, it's very difficult to convey that confusion and the feeling of real amnesia. Because if you're thinking of the six of clubs, or we think you're thinking of the six of clubs, and you're thinking of the nine of diamonds, and I go, what colour's the card? And you go, red. And what suit is it? Diamond.
Mhm.
What is it? Nine of diamonds. It doesn't really seem like you've forgotten anything there. It just feels like you're answering wrong.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a deeper dive into digging into exactly why you saw that card afterwards, which leaves more questions than it does answers, in my opinion, from the perspective of the choreography of the routine. So the way I sort of look at it is if you can confuse the participant in an amnesia routine, like confuse them, which is more often than not something that you want to do during a regular routine, but that confusion and seeing that confusion on the face conveys the story via the reaction that they're genuinely forgetting, right? And that's why I always opt for that version where they completely can't even visualize the card instead of they've changed it
changes,
to
yeah.
another card. So that's just my opinion on it, and I know your opinion on it, but I know why your opinion is what it is, and that's because what you're using in the version I use is something that you wouldn't usually use in everyday performance with a deck of cards. But that's more a facilitation of.
Well, I've seen you do it nonstop. I remember last year I also saw you perform it as well. Your take on it, and it's definitely the better approach, I think, especially when it comes to the perception on the audience, because you see this person and they can't answer the card because what they see is not a card, and it is, I think, just differences in effect. I like it because you can have that little magical bit where now, for example, let's say you show them the Ace of Hearts, do a little change. Now it's a nine of spades. You tell the audience, well, I'll tell you, I'll show you guys as well, just to make sure. And you go through some sort of amnesia.
But you can still have that, right?
Yeah.
You can still have that moment. I just don't put it in. And the reason I don't put it in is because at the end, I want them to completely not be able to remember the card to the point that every single time you try now, it's just going to seem like it's washed away and you can't see anything.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean? And I like that. And it's like as soon as they ask, then the audience go, what is it you remember? And they go, no, it was this. The audience then react again and go, no, you know. And by that point, I've already got rid of what I needed to get rid of, and they can do what they want. And if they say, let's do this again, I don't even mind doing it a second time and it not working.
Okay.
And doing it with a real card and doing it for real and trying it for real and it not working. And then just saying, hypnosis doesn't work on everybody. We know that you're just not suggestible.
You did that yesterday.
That's it. But and look at how it then to somebody who who's done mentalism for 15, 20 years, because of that element of it not working on the second person, the mentalist turned around and went, but I just don't get how.
Yeah, like the connection here was weird because they saw something and they saw something, then it becomes
That's it. And they couldn't understand how it worked. And I think sometimes that elements important in, and I think Darren really understood that in making something believable. Sometimes you've got to fall on your own sword, you know.
Mhm. I like the where you put fart spray on your hand and you go, name the card, name the card, and they just react.
So again, that were originally a Luke May idea, but not with
Yeah,
fart spray.
yeah, with cologne.
He used a cologne or an aftershave,
What I like about the fart spray is that you could technically do it impromptu.
but you wouldn't want to. You'd put fart spray on your hands because your hands smell of farts all the time. So
Well, you could. That's the bit. You could do it impromptu. You don't have to get ready. You could just, a little bit of prep, and you're good to go with that way. I'm gonna put that in my next book.
you should.
That's good.
You should.
We have another one here, I believe. Which mentalist do you think is pushing the boundaries of mentalism? And you can't say Richard Osman.
So which other mentalists do you think
Yeah.
are pushing the boundaries? I like the word "other" there because it makes it
Right.
sound like I am.
Like you are, in your infinite wisdom. Well, you did get nonstop. So I was scratching my arm. I wasn't flat. But you did get nonstop people coming at you and asking you to sign their books and to, oh my God, Peter, you're my favorite mentalist. You're the best mentalist in the planet.
It's very difficult to it's so hard here to translate what my actual thoughts are because you'd have to sit and talk to me about the little details of things that I'm looking at that are related to mentalism, but in big shows. So I had people. Well, as you saw, I had people that were coming up, and we were talking about 1,000-seater venues, and like changing this little bit and changing that. Oh, I'd never thought of that, and I'd never thought of this, and I always look at things a little bit differently. But I think that every single mentalist in their own right is doing what I do. I just think a lot of people are scared to represent what it is that they're doing.
But who? Is there somebody right now that there's like a name that you could say that's like this guy is killing it?
I think I honestly, genuinely think I think people like Louis Laval killing
Mhm.
it. I think there's Neil Scryer, whilst but all for different reasons. Like Neil Scryer I wouldn't consider Neil Scryer a performer.
Mhm.
But some of the thoughts that are added to his books are incredible. There's Muro Dantes, which is over in Florida. Again, really smart guy. Brandon Queen, like really incredible. Rand Pink, super incredible. Andrew Gerard, like doesn't come from out of the shadows much anymore. But I can tell you, look, I've sat in a room with Andrew. We've worked on television, a couple of television shows together. Some in England, some in Ireland, and we never had a chance to meet until we got to Vegas last year, I think it was, and we sat down and we were in a room, and I was really intimidated by Andrew Gerard,
Mhm.
like really intimidated
That's
by
some great
Andrew.
ideas. He has some
Yeah,
wonderful
it
stuff
wasn't that. It's
published,
just he's
unpublished.
so quick. Like I were always intimidated by him, and I'd sit, and every time that I'd throw an idea out, he'd like beat me to the punch, and I was like, "Wow, it's better than mine. It's better than mine." And like last year, for the first time, like we sat down together, and we were just firing, man, backwards and forwards, and we got into such a rhythm, and it were like, wow, like it really made me feel good because it were like for the first time in my life, the one person that were always destroying me at every single turn, like always destroying me at every single turn. We were now bouncing, playing a game of tennis. Do you know what I mean? And so I think Andrew Gerard, like, there's very few people I sit with. Louis Laval's another one. There's very few people I sit down with, and we just riffing off of each other like jazz players. And that's not to say that I'm somewhere where other people are going to do that with me. But what I'm saying,
So,
no, what I'm saying is like it's hard to convey how quick my brain works in that arena until you've sat. You've been there in a TV meeting with me. You sat like when we came over to England that time, and Mark Lemon's another one. Mark Lemon's another name. Mark and I sit there, and you sit. They throw some out. Mark and I like bam, 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 quick.
that's what I hate about Mark too. That Mark is just this. He releases these things that you've seen, and that's just like a little scrape off the top. Just musings that he came up with, and he's sitting on this iceberg of just all these wondrous ideas that if he takes to the grave, it's a real
But
disturbance.
that's everybody. We saw when I said this in an interview I did that I think it's going out in France, so maybe a lot of people won't see it. But there's really two sides to all of us, and the one side is to understand that look, as somebody that is releasing these episodes and views things the way that I view them in terms of plot, premise, and everything else, I'm massively restricted in what I can put out in terms of my products
Hmm.
because the plots are the things that really ring true in the episodes. That's the art, that's the creativity. This is the method. So they're like two different sides. Do you know what I mean? Two very different sides. And yeah, look, Decay's posted there. Like Decay's another guy. Like he has such great ideas. And Decay, when he comes over to my house, we'll sit and we'll argue for hours about the way something's supposed to look and the way it's supposed to be. And he'll tell you himself, like, look, I'm very strict on the way I do things, but if I think something's right, then I'm willing to bend what it is that I'm doing, even the vision I have for things, to make a difference. Nicholas, another one, Nicholas Arnst. A lot of people won't know Nicholas Arnst. I worked on one of Nicholas Arnst's shows, live show on the television pilot, and he's gone over to Dubai. And Nicholas like changed a lot of the way that I thought about things because I'd never created in that realm before. So I had to adapt very quickly. But you know, when we talked about I showed him the first cut of the silence piece where I'm sat and we're eye gazing, and he said, "Look, try this, like just try that." And I tried it, and I'd already played with it, but it didn't quite work. And then going back with his little bit on top of it, it worked perfect. So there's a number of, when I say a lot, like there's a lot, yeah. Michael Murray as well is another, another guy that's really pushing the envelope. I think everybody in their own right. There's so many to name, but they're all doing it in their own right. And these people are all people that I come up with, and I have like a massive amount of respect from Fraser Parker. Like, love Fraser or hate Fraser, Fraser has stayed true to doing the art his way. And you could say what you want about him. Like I've been friends with Fraser for a number of years, and I probably spent more time jamming with Fraser and Michael than anybody else. And those two guys are just something else. Like Michael's a powerhouse at creating things that a lot of people like, and then Fraser's a powerhouse at creating really incredible, intricate things. And he's the thing that I find special about Fraser is that he's different to anybody else that I've ever met. He will lock himself in a dark room with just a dimly lit laptop screen, forget everybody else, turn his phone off, ignore everybody else, and sit doing the most mundane crap for however long until it's right. And whether it's your style of mentalism or not, if you saw the work and hours that actually goes into what he's doing, it's
I'd
great.
love to see a conversation between Fraser Parker and Bill Montana. I'd love to see that.
Bill's an interesting chap. I did reach out to Bill to try to, when I was doing the masterclass mentalism series, or mentalism masterclass series, I reached out to Bill Montana to try to provide something for the readings document, and like it was just so hard to make any sort of communication there. Like but I can imagine those two sat. Like I can imagine Fraser having drunk 50 beers by the time Bill's trying to get the bottle cap to jump off the top of his beer bottle.
Add my mother as the mediator between them, and that conversation will just.
Could you imagine if you had Fraser Parker, Bill Montana jamming, with your mum serving cookies, and Kenton Nepper like directing
Chocolate
the
cake,
pair of them?
yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it'd be like the best. Like,
I
and
think
again, Kenton's obviously giving my start up. Like I'm really thankful for Kenton for giving my start up, and I still, again, last year talking with Kenton, we were sat in a room. There were like 12 of the greatest mentalists and magicians in the world in Vegas, and we were like, right, we need one more person. I'm like, fly Kenton in. I was like, fly Kenton in from Arizona. Kenton come in, and again, just whether you like his stuff or not, whether you like his style or not, in those capacities, he were really great. Like he were really cool and just to sit there with a who's who of like magicians and mentalists and go, wow. And then knowing that I were in that circle, you know
I
what I
think
mean?
you sell yourself a little bit
No, but
short. You're really.
it's mad. Like I don't think people realize it. Like I'm some kid from a look. I never in a million years thought I'd be sat with executives from Warner Brothers or sat being invited into like network meetings for big companies that like the top 3 companies in America. I never thought that'd be a thing. I never thought I'd be working behind the scenes on Ellen DeGeneres' show or any of the talent shows that I worked on, or even some of the Netflix things that I've been doing, or even pilots. I never anticipated any of that. Do you know what I mean? It's not and it's still a little bit surreal. It's not like I'm making millions and millions and millions and millions and millions. You know what I mean? It's not like that. It's like I'm just sat. I'm still doing what I do. You know what I mean? And I still feel I'm the same as everybody that's in the comments. I still feel I'm still accessible. I'm not going to change that. I know it's hard to reach me sometimes, but I'm not. I'm just a guy that likes to sit and think. And when you think about what we're doing, really, it's
Well, you respond to me really quickly.
yeah.
We don't have any more questions. I believe we
I
ran
think
through
there's
them.
some on the other side.
Well, there were. I guess Richard Bush might be the last one. There was a question in regards to a Richard
Yeah, I think
Bush.
we'll wrap this up quickly.
Peak.
This one, this is a good one.
Is it?
Do you want to read that to me? Yeah, because I think that's good. Like,
Well, this one is based on the video that you made, and it says number 1, have an inspiring / compelling story to tell. Number 2, Choose appropriate spectators and an appropriate location. Number three, season with sprinkles of magic. Make sure it's well incorporated into the cake. Number four, make sure every cake tastes good or better, but remember which ingredient ratios work best. Did I forget something?
Yes, but you were bang on. Like all those things are thought about. Are thought about as closely as possible. You keep moving on that chair and it keeps making those
I
noises.
promise it's the chair. It's not me. It's not
Are you
me.
sure it's not you?
Well, you know what? The leather does that. Leather really makes it
I don't
sound
think this
like
is
I'm
leather.
just ripping.
I think this
Pleather,
is
pleather. Yeah,
pleather.
we don't want to upset the vegans.
So so yeah, you are right, 100%. All those things are important, from the characters, the plots, the trying to keep the balance of the magic and the story just right. But there's one thing that's missing, and it's missing in a big way, and it's something that I am going to approach and I am going to think about very hard, and that's conflict. And that's what's missing. That's what's missing from all magic and mentalism. It's what's missing from any good piece of mentalism and magic is conflict. And the conflict, you almost feel like every time you see something, it's going to succeed, or you almost feel like the things come to a successful conclusion. Even if, I think Darren sort of got there with it when he were failing, whether he were failing on purpose or not, who knows? It might have been that he was just failing. But the point is that I think it didn't, for me, theatrically, it didn't quite hit the mark, in the sense that it wasn't, it wasn't like a story or a film. You look at Rocky Balboa. Everybody loves the fact that we see him, this bum that's got no money, get beaten by Spider Rico in the beginning, and then gets an opportunity to fight the world champion and somehow prevails. Like
Bloodsport.
Bloodsport's a brilliant example. Frank Dukes, who we will be meeting. If you know Bloodsport and you love Bloodsport, we'll be going and hanging out with the Frank Dukes, and I might even try to film something with him.
I'm very much excited about meeting the legendary Frank Dukes.
It's going to be incredible, right? But yeah, you look at that. You look at Bloodsport. He starts up, goes to steal a samurai sword. The first bit of conflict is the fact that the Tanaka won't train him because he's not Asian, he's not Japanese, And then when Tanaka's son dies, he's like, "Look, I can do it," and he trains. He gets invited to the Kumite, and then when he gets invited to the Kumite, you've got the US government trying to take him back. There's the conflict. There's the conflict there, but there's a love interest. Do you know what I mean? It's like, narratively, a lot of magic and mentalism doesn't have that conflict. It's like, yeah, pick a card. Oh, I don't know what it is. Can I find it? And you almost know secretly that somebody's going to find it. So trying to find a conflict is something that I'm going to be working on a lot. Whether that happens around the magic and the narrative of the story that's being driven, who knows? Whether it's I incorporate more personal elements into that and show you the stuff that's going on in my life that's not, because it's not always like sunshine and rainbows. It's not always positive, It's sometimes it's not, and it's a lot of grind. When you're working 20 hours a day, and then you get an hour's rest and you're back up, then getting everything prepped for the next day, and then doing another 16, 20 hours. It's like for 30 seconds on the screen. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So I think, yeah, conflict's missing from that, but it's a great point.
Tommy Wonder talks about a lot in his books, Visions of Wonder, about conflict and the introduction, and he does a great bit with a lighter, right? That he uses as like an intro whenever, because he hates the question, which I agree, of would you like to see something, right? Whereas it's better to do something that would show them rather than tell them or even ask them. And he does a lighter that he's trying to light a cigarette, R.I.P., and he fixes a problem by turning the lighter into a book of matches, and then that way he solved the problem. And if somebody were to see that, now they're kind of in line as to what but the conflict would be there.
I think it's still a small conflict that has no knock-on effect other than.
But it's just a small
No,
example.
it's great. It's great. I just think that narratively, that's just the perfectionist in me says that that's a small conflict that's self-indulgent.
Yeah,
I love Tommy Wonder. Like, look, you've heard me so many times using the Tommy Wonder line, "Don't let the performance become a casualty of the method."
Nice, yeah.
Right, I use that all the time. That's where I think the weakness is with things like Mother of All Book Test, which is a great book test, probably the best out there. But I think that's the weakness, is that the method there, it directly affects the performance. So, yeah, I think that trying to find conflict is harder than it looks. And that's the bit that's missing from my stuff.
Well, hopefully we don't have conflict with Frank Dukes, because I feel like
he would beat the shit out of us.
He'd beat us both, whether through physical means or mental torture.
He'd blindfold himself and put his arm through it. He didn't mack us.
Didn't mock us, so hopefully we make it through. I believe we've exhausted the questions.
I think we have. If there's any more questions that you've got, leave them in the comments section here. Go watch the episodes. Go watch what it is that I've put up. I know that I'm taking my time with the next episode, but I promise you it's coming. We just filmed bits on Hollywood Boulevard. We filmed bits in Vegas. I filmed bits at home. I filmed travel aspects. I'm going to be filming on the stops that I take along the way whenever I go on this little road trip. I have some more exciting news that's probably not going to be that exciting for anybody else but me. But
I think it's very exciting for a lot of people. The potential of a Peter Turner being a little bit more mainstream.
yes, maybe.
You know, we'll see. We'll see about that.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I can't say too much, but I'm very happy with the way things are going. That's all I'm going to say. We good?
Are you solid? Say subscribe, like my channel as well, Pig Cake. If you're not familiar, subscribe to that channel. Lord knows I need it. But I think from
I
that,
think you've been shadow banned on everything, bro.
I don't think so. I think that it's by virtue of my content.
His content is a bit racy. I had to tone him back.
You did, and I hope you're proud of me for not.
I'm,
I've been shaking in the background.
do you know, I'm very proud of you, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's why you need to get off now to go scream in the bathroom.
I think so. I'm gonna scream to myself. But apart from that, thank you guys for being a part of this. Peter, I think you're very generous when it comes to the information you share, and it's your downfall, but it's also your claim to fame. So I appreciate it, keeping me under your wing as a father that I never had,
You're welcome,
and
son.
hopefully, I'll sit under the learning tree for years to come.
And if you want to learn more about this sort of stuff, you can sign up to the Pig Cake Magic Academy, where you'll learn 1,500 tricks from
That's true.
card tricks,
Yeah,
coin tricks.
Pig Cake Magic Academy, the home of over 1,500 videos going over card stuff, coin stuff, some mentalism. Believe it or not, we just shot a video for the Mentalism Academy. So if you're interested in that, you should check it out on my channel. I have to now shimmy awkwardly to the camera to turn it off.
Bye, 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 bye. So,
I have to do one of these. The focus on this is really impressive. So end live and